Recently, I created a video which showcased how to create this 10 preloaders, which is available in my YouTube. You could see it's 2-hour video. But in this video, we are going to learn the technical aspect of it so that you could create custom preloaders and not be relied on these 10 ones. But just keep in mind that you need to know GSAP for this one, which I have explained how to do it in this video, which is 2-hour. Even if you are not familiar with coding, it is still easy to do. It's very easy to like animate, because with GSAP they have just made it like so easy. You need to know GSAP and little bit JavaScript that I will explain in this video, and you don't need to be like really good at it. I'll explain the stuff that you need at least, so that you could do it easily without having any issues in future. So I have a page. I just have like a basic what you call section in here. We are just going to make our first preloader. So let me remove this. Let's make it as 100 VH because we want it to be full screen. Actually, I like to keep it 100 DVH because if you keep 100 DVH, it works nicely in mobile too rather than VH, and you could test it both, or test both VH and DVH in your mobile. Basically, you know, when we when we load our website, there's this top bar that shows in the mobile. That makes it that takes space, and it kind of ruins the experience because that's not giving 100 VH of the screen size. But if you use DVH, it gives like perfectly that size where it takes the top bar in consideration. So we keep it 100 DVH. How about we make it something like this pink? So I'm going to show you something like basic one for now. So we are going to learn how to do these lines and how to change this text, and all the GSAP animation that I've done, you will need to understand it via this one. I will show some basic GSAP, but to understand it in more details, you will need to watch this video. So we are going to use two stuff. We are going to use GSAP and we are going to use something called Pace.js. So if you search for GSAP CDN, you can actually click on here, and this will allow you to use GSAP on your website. And if you search Pace.js, and if you go to this page, which is code by Zach or whatever, you could see this is what Pace.js does. It basically tells us how much our page has been loaded. So if our page has been loaded 50%, it will give us like 50. If the page is loaded by 20, it will give us 20. And it has like lots of easy options where you could like choose what needs to be checked. So if you don't want to check any Ajax value, if you don't want to check any any other element, I don't know, I haven't checked anymore. You could check the documentation, go in chat GPT and ask it for a quicker explanation. But for now, we are just going to use the basic one. It's very easy, so don't get confused. So first thing first, let's use Pace.js only. We will add or might as well add the GSAP, whatever, so that we don't have to like open this tab. The way we add GSAP to our page is by using HTML widget, so, or any other code, by the way. So we add our GSAP by simply, I just pressed in the middle one and then paste it in here. Let's close this. Now let's copy this first one, which is script src, like this one, and copy it and then paste it in here. So now both of this, like GSAP and Pace.js, will be loaded on our website because it is taking from CDN and then adding it to our website. Let me show what it does. So if you type style like this, we can add any CSS. Even if you have like no Elementor Pro, it allows you to add custom CSS. And then we will add script. This allows us to add our JavaScript. Okay. Now let me check the code because I don't remember. So this is how it looks. So pace.on, which is like this, everything is provided by Pace. Okay, so it's not something that I came by myself. It is just provided by Pace. Let's copy this and let me show you one thing. So when we type Pace on progress, this is all, this part, like till this part, is provided by Pace, and this is percent. So basically you could type anything in here, and any value that is provided by this progress function that is created by Pace would be added in here. So let's say if I type in here, let's say console.log and type percent, because this is where it is stored, right? And let me add semicolon. This is semicolon, by the way. I don't know if we can see better in here, like this one. Let me copy this much and paste it in my script. Okay, let me do preview. you would see nothing's going to happen. But if I do inspect and go to console, you could see there are some values in here. If you see any error or any other text which is like red or yellow, it probably means that you did something wrong in this one, like you misspelled something. Or the best easy way to do it is by copy this in ChatGPT, and it will say like you missed this comma, you missed this spelling or anything. Okay, but you could see that as the page was loading, it gave us like different values, 4, 6, 8. So when it was loaded 22%, it gave us 22, like this till 100. So we can use this value to actually control lots of our stuff in our page. And just to show you guys, if you type here anything, let's say if you type in your load like this, it doesn't have to be percent, you could type anything. It's kind of like we are creating a variable which stores this value whichever is provided in here. Okay, you could think that even if I do like load and then load, it would still work. So it doesn't have to be percent, you could type anything in there. You could see it just works nicely. So let's keep it percent because that's like easy to understand. We can remove the console log. This is only used for like debugging purposes to check if everything's working or not. Now remember that this goes from 0 to 100. Now let's say if this one had a container like this, and always make sure your HTML widget is below all your elements, because this HTML or this JavaScript should work or will only work after your element has been loaded, right? Because if it's loading before your elements, then it doesn't have anything to control. So always place it bottom and the page loads like top to bottom, right? There's another way to actually fix that, and that is by adding like an document onload event listener. You could add in ChatGPT and say like add document event listener. It's like one line code, and it will, no matter where you place, it will only run after whole page has been loaded. Okay, so it's your choice. I like to keep it at the bottom like this. Now this container, let's call it as our progress bar. I'm going to call it BG, but let's say this is our progress bar. Let's make it red color. Let's do something nicer, like blue color. Okay, you could see this full width value is 0 to 100, right? Like this, which means that if we add the value that is getting from our percent into this one, we can actually create a progress bar which shows how much page has been loaded, like this. And one more thing, if I make this to 0, you could say it's not completely 0. And then reason for that, and before that, let me just try 2 and see it's not being 2 pixels. And the reason for that is if you go to advanced, there's something called padding, and if you're using default Elementor settings, by default it adds like 10 padding, so 10 left, 10 right, and everywhere. So right now there is 20, this is 20 pixels in height, because there is 20 padding and top and 10 padding and top and 10 padding at bottom. So if we do 0, then it will remove everything, and we can even remove this one, and this would allow you to add your custom sizing. So for testing purposes, we will make it like 20 pixels and then we will lower it. Now to control this in our JavaScript, we need to add a CSS class to it. So we will call it as progress bar BG. There's a reason why I've typed it BG, and we will understand it sooner. So in our HTML, so one thing you need to do whenever you want to use GSAP in Element, if you are using normal coding, then you don't need to do this. But in the styles, which is this one, we will type dot, then add a CSS class, and here we'll type transition none and then exclamation mark important. The reason why we do this is by default Elementor adds like transition all like this. I think so. This is what Elementor adds, and when you add this and you try to animate with GSAP, it kind of creates conflicts, which makes the animation not look smooth. So when we type transition none important, we just override that whatever Elementor has been added, so that the transition is important. The transition is smoother. So whenever you want to animate something in GSAP, just make sure to add the CSS class in here with transition none, and then do all that stuff. I've explained it better in this 2-hour video, so you could check that. Now let me copy this CSS class, and I'm going to show you in here. Okay, so let's just move this down. So whenever we want to do something in JavaScript, we need to actually get the element in JavaScript and place it in a variable. There are two types of variable. Variable is nothing but a container, and we are basically creating a container. We are putting a label on it, and then we are just adding any CSS class that we find into that container. So let me just explain. Let's say if I type constant, let's say we type constant and then we type let's say jar size, and then if I type 100, then we created a container whose we put a label. Let's type like something like pickle so that it's easy to understand in my example. We created a container, we put a label on it called pickle, and then we are basically storing a value 100 in that container. So whenever we want to get this value, we simply just check that container and see what is inside that container. We say, oh, there's 100 in it. So let's say if I type x equal to 5 plus pickle like this, then what's going to happen is it's going to take 5 and then check, oh, what's in this container? Oh, it's 100. Then it will do 105 and then add it to x like this. And when we use equal to, it basically takes whatever is on the right and puts it on the left. See, equal to right is anything else that's on right, it puts it in the left. So that is one variable which is constant. But the difference between constant and let, so there is second variable called let. There's difference between these two variable, which is very basic. You use constant when you don't want the value to change, and you use let when you want the value to change. So let's say if I was using constant like this, and in future I went pickle is equal to 150, because right now something happened in the code and then I want it to now change the pickle value into 150. We don't need to type constant again and again, because we only need to, this is called initializing. So it is something like you could do like this and then type pickle equal to 100 to initialize it by default like this. Okay, but if you type it in one, it's easier. So we just created a container, we placed 100 in it, and then in future we went and did 150. But this would not work because we're using constant, and constant is basically used when you have something that shouldn't be changed, a value that shouldn't be changed. And it's usually used when you have something that shouldn't be changed, and so that you accidentally don't change it in future. But if you use let like this, let, and then do this stuff, then every time you do some changes, it is going to do some like changes. Okay, so right now it is 100, then it is 150, then it is pickle equal to pickle plus 50. So it will take like the new value, that is 150, and then add 50, and then which would be 200, and then add it on the left side. So just keep that in mind. This is like not really needed for this one, but just to show you guys. Now with constant, we can not just store values, we could store like lots of stuff, but right now we want to store this CSS class into that one in our constant. So we just need to create like any variable that you want. We can name it anything. I'm just going to call it DM progress bar BG. Just remember, anything that you make capital should be used as capital in future, and anything you make small should be used, however you spelled it, it should always be same in future. Okay, we will do document in our so we are saying in our document, do query selector and then do progress bar. So this is like very basic. This is like a pre-made functions in JavaScript, so you need to just like remember it. There's nothing that you could do about it. We basically created a container, we'll put a label on it, and then in our document we searched for the CSS class progress bar BG, and then we added in here, and then we are just placing it into our variable. Just keep in mind, this one only gets the first one in your stuff. So if you had like multiple CSS classes like this, it will not get all of it. For that you need to loop through it, which is like for another video. Now if I copy this, because this is the variable, if I go into here, we type style, we type width equal to, we know percent goes from 0 to 100, right? Then we could select this width and then add percent to it. So you could see in this one we do not have percent, but we just have a value. You see there's no percentage up after this one. And to control this one, we actually need to have percentage at the end. Right now you cannot see it, but if you go into this one and then type percentage like this, 50, you could see it works. So we want it to be percentage, right? So we cannot simply just type percent because it would not work. We actually need to have percentage, but we cannot simply just type that because it's JavaScript. So you need to have some stuff, because if you use percentage, it is actually a mathematical calculation. But when we don't want to do that, we use tilde, like this tilde event, or not event, what is that, key. Let me just open my notepad. I don't know if we can see better in here. This is above your tab key or below your escape key. Okay, literally the first key below escape. So this is tilde. We do dollar, we do percent, like this. So now it takes this value, whichever it is, inside this one, and then we type percent in here. Okay, this percentage, this what you call curly brackets are only used when we use tilde. Okay, and when we use tilde, it basically allows us to do like more stuff. Another way would be to just type, I guess, percent plus percentage, like this would also work, I think so. I am more used to using this one, so I'll use this one. Now if I copy this much into our script like this, let's do preview and let's hope it works. And you could see it is working nicer, like this, went to 100. Now one more thing is, when you're using this stuff, it's better to make this 0, this width to be 0 by default, this progress bar, because a page, when it loads, it does not load the script instantly, but it loads the HTML and CSS, right? And if we keep it 0, if we keep it at 100, and let's say someone has like very slow internet speed, it might show this as 100 for a few seconds until the script has been loaded, and once the script has been loaded, it will go to 0. But if you keep it to 0, it will always be at 0. So no matter what happens there, even if internet speed is low, it will be no issues. But when you want to customize it, increase it to 100, and then when you don't want to customize, after doing all the customizing, just make it 0. For time being, let's just keep it at 100. Now you could see this works nicer, but this is not a good looking progress bar, I think so. So what we can do is, we can select this one. Inside this one, we will add another container, and this one would be our actual progress bar, like this. And let's give this a red color so that we can see this. Now now remember, because we removed this padding, it is now taking like complete space, which is nice. Also make sure to selecting this progress bar and selecting grow, so that just in case the size, so let's say if I make this one to be 100, let me do 200, and if I remove grow, you could see it is not actually just extending the size of it. So if you do grow, it will extend the size. Let's go to progress bar, make it 20. Now this progress bar also needs to have 0 padding, else it would add like unnecessary spacing. Let's change this CSS class, let's remove it, and then we will actually animate this one. We can even make this progress bar instead of progress bar BG. Let's just go in here, let's remove progress bar BG, and let's make this one progress bar. Make sure to do everywhere you're doing this. Okay, let's also add our transition. So I just added comma and then did dot dm, not this one, my bad. Okay, this is like this. Now we got a nicer animation like this. This progress bar, we should always keep this as 100, and we should keep this as 0, so that now if we animate, it animates like this. And this one would be our background color. So if we let's say make this something nicer, like white in color, and let's make this something like nicer black in color, you would see that this would work as a progress bar. So this would show how much it has been doing, like this. So let's keep the progress bar as 0. If it looks bigger, don't worry, just scale it down, or just make this collapse and it will show the actual size. Let's do preview, let's see how good it looks. And you could see we got a progress bar like this. Next, I want to add is a text in here. So if I go to my progress bar, you could see there's a number counter that goes up, and this is very easy to do. Before that, I want to show you some more stuff. So if I go and make this to be 100, if I go in this progress bar and set it to as center like this, now the progress bar would actually be like this. It would animate like this, coming from middle, which also looks cool. If you do this from right and then go in here, it would go from right. Okay, you could also, instead of using this, you could actually go and do position absolute too, and this would actually allow you to add, like, let's say a text in the center without moving it anywhere. Again, if you check any YouTube video, there's like very short YouTube video which shows what absolute does, position absolute. It doesn't have to be for Elementor, it can be like any other like basic coding one too, and you would understand it. Okay, just make sure that if you are using position absolute, this progress bar, go to additional and then make it hidden. Okay, just to, or we will do it right now so that it does not mess it up, even if you're not using position absolute. So let's just keep it like this. You know what, let's keep it in center, looks cool. Okay, so let's work on creating a counter. Okay, now one more thing before that, I know I keep going back and forth, but you could create, once you have created this progress bar, you could add it like anywhere. So if you want to do is to position absolute, you could place it like there, you could place it at the bottom of the page like this. You could even, I don't know, place it anywhere. So let's just do default. Next step I'm going to add is a text widget. Make sure it is above our HTML. I am going to make this as span, or let's just keep it p, why not, and I'm going to call it as 0%. Now if you want, you could actually type it anything in here, it doesn't have to be 0%, but like I said, if someone has like slow loading speed, internet speed, and the script has not been loaded, then they would see the 0% text in here. But let's say if you had typed something like hello in here, and someone has very slow loading speed, it would show hello text in here until the script has loaded. As soon as the script loads, it will go to 0%. So I like to keep it as 0%. It's like your choice. Let's make it, I guess I like to do viewport width. We can do pixel, but if you do viewport width, it would be percentage based. So from left to right is our width, and based on the percentage, so if I make it, let's say 50, it would be 50% of the viewport width, like this. So let's do 15, something like this. So it is the size 15% of our left to right screen size. Let's add it as DM progress counter. Now similarly, we will do the same stuff in here, but one more thing that if you have checked in here, so if I go into this console, or actually let's just do it and then show you how what we are doing. So similarly, this counter needs to be added in our JavaScript, right? So let's type constant. Let's give it any label. You could type it anything, it doesn't have to be same. From our document, we want to get a progress counter and then store it in here. This progress counter, we actually need to do different. So you could see I've already copied in here what we want to do, but here's what we need to do. We need to change the text content inside of this. So we'll type text content equal to, let's just type percent and let's see what happens. Okay, so when we type this, it would just replace whatever it is added in there. Let's paste in our script. Let's do preview. Okay, I didn't update the code in here, I think. Okay, let's see if it works now. And you could see it is working, but we are getting this big number, and also the styling which we did is now disappeared. You could see. So I just added like another heading in here. to show you what's actually happening. So if I click on this icon and then click here, we can actually see the HTML one. And you could see that when we add an heading widget, what Elementor creates is like 3 divs. So it creates one div, and then this one Elementor heading title. And then this one is the one that has all the styling. Okay. Now when we add and when we do the stuff, when we do like the text content, you could see it has removed all the 3 divs. It has only made it into one. So there were 3 divs, but now it is only one. So what we need to do is, rather than changing this one, we actually need to change this one. So 1, 2, 3, this one, which is added by Elementor. I don't know why the Elementor adds like 3 of it. It's like not good for speed and all and DOM size, but whatever. So if you look at this one, you see it says Elementor heading title. So let's say if I give this one a CSS class of DM heading class, something like this, and let's do preview. If I select this heading, it says DM heading class, and then inside of this Elementor heading title. So what we can do instead is we can select this one DM progress counter like this, and instead of this we can actually type dot. So I'm simply just typing instead rather than copying. So in our DM progress counter, do space dot Elementor. I forgot what it was called. Elementor heading title. Okay, Elementor heading title. Now in this variable, we are actually storing this stuff rather than this container. Okay, so when we replace now, it is going to replace this one rather than that one. So let's copy now. Go into this. I will just remove this one. Paste it. And let's do preview. And you could see the styling is there, but there's like too big of a variable because that's just how much it uses. So what we need to do is we need to actually make it smaller, and to do that there's like pre-built math functions in JavaScript. It's not very complicated. Okay, we are going to use Math.floor. It's very basic. Don't get scared if you're not familiar with it. It basically means that if it is 10, let's say if the value is 10.59, it will basically make it to 10 like this. If it was 10.2, it will make it to 10. If it was 10.98, it will make it to 10. So what it basically does, it basically just converts it into the first value. It's similar to rounding, but if you were using rounding, then if it was 10.6, it would make it to 11, right? And if it was 10.2, it would make it to 10. So we don't want that. We actually want it to be one value. So no, if we use Math.floor, it just basically uses the lowest value like this. So now you could see any value that is in here, we just want to use lowest value. And this is already something that I've created in here. So if I do the same stuff that I've done on top, which is create this tilde, get the percent value. Actually, no, we need to type Math.floor and then get the percent. So it will take whatever it is in there and then convert it into basic value. Okay, so remember curly brackets and all and curly stuff. Let's copy this. Let's preview. And you could say it works. Actually want percentage in here, so I'm simply going to go into the code. Before the tilde, I'm just going to type percentage. And you could say it works. You could even type anything else. It doesn't have to be percentage. Now if I select this one, give position absolute, make it go to right bottom. When you use position absolute, it does not take any space and you could place it anywhere. I could do 50, 50, something like this. And we got ourselves a progress bar and progress counter. Obviously style it better. You could see I styled it, selected nicer font in here. Now we want to add some GSAP animations. Just for better looking, I'm just going to make this progress bar be at the bottom too. Accidentally selected wrong one, this one. And now this is at bottom like this. Okay. Now I'm not going to create like any complicated animation in here. That is for the future one. So I'm just going to call it as DMmotionarts. I'm going to make this as P because there's no reason to add H1, H2 because that's not good for SEO, especially for preloaders. You only need to use H1, H2 for your page elements. Let's make it black. Okay. And I'm just going to call it as DM text. Why not? Now I've already explained how to do GSAP in this video in much more detail. So I'm quickly going to go over it from now on. I'm going to do GSAP 2 and then use our CSS, open curly brackets, close it. And here we will do all our animations. So we are using to, we are not using from like this. So if you are using to, it will go from this location to whatever we add in here. If we're using from, it would go from whatever we add in here to this state. So the animation that I want is for the text to come from top, scale it a bit, the letter spacing, so it needs to come from top like this. So let's say if I do transform offset, it will come from like this to the normal size. Then it will do letter spacing and then go back to 0. Okay, it's very basic animation, so let's quickly do that. So first thing, we will actually use from. That's better for that one. Do y minus 100 pixels, duration of 1 second. I will also make it come from opacity 0. So I'm using from, which means this one would be the initial location. Let's copy this and see if it's even working. Let's do preview. Something's happening. Let's see, inspect. Missing. So I missed a comma in here. You need to add a comma in here. Let's do preview. And you can see it came from top to the default size. Now if I, let's say, want another animation to happen but only want it to happen after this stuff has happened, then we cannot simply just do it, right? We can obviously do is something like GSAP 2, again DM text, comma, and then do like letter spacing. Just keep in mind we cannot type letter spacing like we type in CSS, because in JavaScript minus means, or dash means minus. So for example, if this was, let's say, CSS, we would type something like this, right? Letter spacing, letter spacing 50 pixels, and that would make the letter spacing to be 50. But in JavaScript, we cannot type it because letter dash spacing means letter minus spacing, because in JavaScript we could do mathematical calculations. So what we type instead is we type this way and then the first letter as capital. Let's do this. We need to add this semicolon, not tilde, just semicolon. Not semicolon, what is this called? This quotation marks. In here we can type, I guess, 30 pixels. We could type comma, duration of 1 second, But one more thing, we need to add a delay of 1 second, because this one happens for 1 second, then obviously this one should happen after 1 second delay. But that would be kind of annoying to do. This one would work, but it is kind of annoying to do. Let's see. You could see it works. But if you had like lots of stuff, then it would be annoying. And whenever you change the duration, you would need to change the delay. Kind of annoying. So we'll create something called timeline. So let's create a constant. I'll call it as DM text timeline equal to GSAP timeline. Now, instead of typing GSAP, we will type this one. We can now remove the delay, because what this means is that this code would only run when the top animation has finished. Let's do preview. And you could see it works. I will create another, and this one would make the letter spacing be 0. So it goes from 30 to 0, and that would be our final animation. Let's see if this works. Let's do preview. It comes from top, goes scales down, scales down. This one is not visible because this is taking some space. Let me just scroll down quickly, and now we can see. Now the thing about this animation is that when the animation finishes, we want to hide it, right? But should it only hide when the animation finishes, or it should only hide when the progress has been finished? Okay, so let me explain to you guys in a better way. Let's say if we select this container, which is, let's call it as preloader. Let's give it a class as DM preloader. Okay, I'm going to copy this, and we are going to create another timeline in here. One more thing, I think you guys would be confused, but when you're using GSAP, you don't really need to have it added in a constant variable. Like I said, that when we want to use something in JavaScript, you need to add in a variable like this one. But for GSAP, you could do it like this, but you could also do it like this, which is like adding it in a variable and then not adding this quotation marks. I've explained in that other video better. But here I just added the DM preloader, which is after all the animation has been finished, I will do Y. I'll add it in quotation, because if you don't add any quotation, it is kind of like in percentage. So I'll add it in quotation, and I'll do minus 150 VH, so which is same as like minus 150 percentage in top and bottom, or in height. We put height basically. Let's do preview. It scales up, it scales down, and then it is hiding right now. Okay, I know it is looking weird, but that is because we haven't made it fixed. But one thing you could check is that this animation is actually based on this end animation. This is exit animation, right? This is the exit animation. It is based on this timeline. So right now our timeline takes 1 2 3 seconds. So it, no matter how much time it takes for your page to load, it will always hide it after 3 seconds, and we don't want that, right? Let's say your page is taking 8 seconds to load and the animation finishes in 3 seconds, then we don't want our hiding animation to happen, right? We want it to happen only when the page has been completely loaded. And we can do that, that is make it based on page load, so that it only runs when our page has been loaded 100%. But let's say your page loads in 2 seconds, but your animation is 5 seconds long. So do we want to hide it, or hide the page before our animation even finishes? Or do we want to wait for the page to be completely loaded and the animation to be completely loaded? So the easiest way is to make sure that both our animation and both our page has been loaded. That way our full animation is seen no matter how fast the page has loaded, and it is only hidden when full page has been loaded. Okay, so I know it is confusing, but We are just going to remove this. I'll just paste it in here like this to keep it as a backup. In our GSAP timeline, I'll open curly brackets, close curly brackets, and to enter, and here we would add some stuff. Now before this one, I will actually create two variables. So we'll call it let is, we are creating let because we want to change it later, is GSAP animation finished. Okay, so we are just creating a container, we are just putting a label on it, and we are saying it as false. Now these are boolean values. Basically what boolean values are, when it can only have two values, which is true and false. So you cannot add anything else into this. You could only add true and false, and also 1 is considered as true and 0 is considered as false. So it is a binary basically. And let's type is progress finished, and we will keep it as false because by default our animation is not finished, and obviously by default our progress has not been finished. Now in this one, as soon as our timeline has been finished, we can set this to true. Okay, so we will do is let's copy this so that we do not mess it up. Is GSAP finish equal to true, like this, but it's not going to automatically do that for us. So we need to first type on complete, open this bracket to the arrows, and then add it in here like this. And remember, we actually have another function that I have never shown you guys. This is something that comes with Pace, which is called done, and we will set this. Actually we need to make sure this is on top like this because this code is here, right? I don't think it would cause any issues, but just to keep it safe, we'll keep this variables on top. We will, as soon as this this Pace on done, it is pre-made functions or pre-made stuff in Pace that we can use. So as soon as this is done, we will call it as is progress finished to true. So what's going to happen is when an animation finishes, we just change this variable to true, and when this is finished, we set is progress finished variable to true. Now this is not automatically going to do anything for us. We are basically just creating a container and we have set it to true. That's all we have done. And for this, we can actually create something called a function, and function is basically a code which is stored in, like, let's say a zip file kind of stuff, and it can be reused again and again. Okay, so for example, let me give an example before. Let's say if I create a function and we call it as calculate like this, and then open bracket like this. If I type x equal to x plus 1, okay, like this, and our x by default is at 0, like this. So now when we use function like this, it doesn't actually run the code, it basically stores it. Okay, it is just storing the code. You could type any amount of code in here, but this is basically storing in it. And if I now type, let's say in here, if I type calculate like this, which is, we are just typing this one, it is going to run this function, which is x equal to x plus 1. So x is 0 here, 0 plus 1 is 1. Now x value would be 1. Now if I type, so this one would give us x equal to 1, like this. We use double equal to when we want to, like, check if left and right is same. Okay, now if I type it again, like calculate like this, then x would now be 2. Okay, because this function we are just doing it again. So right now it was x equal to 1. After this one we are running it again. Now it is set to 1. 1 plus 1 equal to 2. So you could see we can use this code again and again rather than typing it again and again. So that's what we are going to do. We are simply going to create a function which would be called as like hide preloader, or what we can call it. Sure, let's do a hide preloader function. And then open curly brackets, close curly brackets. In this one, we actually want to run this code, right? Because that is what we have done, which is making it hide. Now this code should only run when this is true and this is true. So both of this should be true, so that it only hides when both our animation has finished and both our page has been loaded. Sorry, both our animation and page has been loaded completely or finished completely. So if I type if basically allows us to add some condition so that it only runs if the condition inside of it is true. If we search for is GSAP finished, like this, if GSAP finished, and we do and like this double, and then we type is progress finished in here. Okay, so basically if both of this true, basically how if condition works is that if something is true, then only run the code. Okay, like this. If it is false, then it would do nothing. Okay, instead of this you could type anything like this. So is x equal to let's say 5, like this, then it would only run this if x equal to 5. You could even add like lots of complicated stuff in here. So this and functionality, what it does is that if true and true, then it will give us the value true. If true and false, so if we do true and false, then it would give us false. So no matter, so anytime there is even one false, it will give us false. If both are false, it would give us false. Any one of them is false, it would give us false. So this code would not run if any one of this is false. If this both are true, then only it would run. So this would make sure that if our GSAP is finished is true, which is this one, and if our progress finish is true, which is this one, if both of this true, then only we are going to hide it. Let's open curly brackets, close it. Let's add our code inside of this one. So now we are making sure that our animation, which is hiding one, will only run when both of these are true. But again, like I said, this function would not be running until we call it. So let's copy this much. And when should we call it? Let's call it in here like this. So when our page has been loaded, and then we will call it again here like this. So let's say if our page loads in 2 seconds, but our GSAP animation happens in 5 seconds, then let's say in 2 seconds, it would send the message hide preloader, and our GSAP is false, right? So this is true, but this is false because the animation has not finished. So this one is sending message to our function. It is checking, okay, it is false and true. So we are not going to do anything. So if you just add it in one location, it would not run, because next time when the GSAP animation finishes, we need to check it again, because then next time it would be true and true like this. So like we are basically saying that once this is finished, check this function, and when this is this is done, check this function. And one of this would always never run, because there would be time when it would be false for some section. Let's do preview and let's see what happens. So you see the page did load, but the page did load quicker at 100%, but the animation is still running. So it's not actually hiding completely. Now let's say if I just, where is it? Let's say if I just make this to true by default, okay, rather than doing all that stuff, let's just make this true by default. Let's see what happens. It is still happening. Let's see why. Okay, so one important thing, we are still using timeline in here, which is not a good stuff, because the timeline only runs when this one has finished, right? So we actually need to change this to GSAP 2. Why? Simply because we don't want this one to be dependent on the timeline. This one just needs to be its own stuff. Okay, now let's do preview. And you could see even the animation didn't finish. The animation is still running and it is hiding. So it just comes down to your requirement. So if you want both of this to finish, then make sure both of these are set to false like this. Let's do preview. Now both of this should be, it would wait for it to finish and then hide. And simply you need to select this one, make this fixed, make this 999, do preview, and it's done. To even make it better, you could do is uh, you could you could add one more stuff in here, which is on complete. So when this animation completes, we will run another function. Remember, I added a comma in here. Okay, I've explained in GSAP tutorial why we use comma in here. I've not explained on complete and all. This would be explained in the second video that I'm planning to make, but just remember this one requires comma. Only the final element should not have any comma like this. We want to actually hide this preloader. So you know what? Let's just create a constant in here. Constant dm preloader document dot query selector dot dm preloader like this. If you want, you could now simply just add it in here like this, but on complete. So when this animation has been complete, we'll do style display none. So now we are simply just removing it completely. This would make sure that, okay, let me copy this in here like this. So when our this is removed, sorry, this animation is complete, it is completely removed from our DOM element by doing display none. Not removed completely, but basically not present there. You could say it is disappearing quickly. Probably should add a delay on it and it should work nicer like this. So yeah, that's all. Again, this style display none is usually not needed if you do like y minus 150 vh or something. But if you are doing something like, let's say, I don't know which animation this one is. Okay, not this one. Let me show. Like something like this. You could say this one fades out. So if you don't do display none and if you just fade it out, then you would not be able to click on this element. You need to do display none so that it completely gets removed. Okay, so it just depends on what you have done, and onComplete would help you to basically remove it from your this stuff so that you could click anywhere. So that's all for this video. This is a big video, but this is a technical part. So yeah, thanks for watching. Goodbye.